We have the presence of a quorum, and the meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. Thank you all for being here this evening. First on our agenda is closed session, but we're going to skip that and do that at the end so we can start to work through the agenda. So with that being said, we are going to start with 5A1, which is to review the revisions to local board policies. First being an administrative goals and objectives. Grell, you want to help facilitate this as we go through it as the chair of the policy committee?
Thank you, Jason. What I would like to do is turn it over to the administration to give the background for these policy changes, and I'd really like for the board to understand sort of the overall structure of the strategic planning, which is what this whole series of policies is about, and that's what we're trying to make sure everybody understands it and how the community-based accountability system fits in.
So good evening, President Burdine and board members and Dr. Saavedra. The policies that are presented to you this evening align our strategic planning efforts as a district from the boardroom down to the classroom. This begins, of course, with our board goals and priorities that help drive our district work. So in November of 2019, just a few months ago, Policy BQ was approved. And as a reminder, Policy BQ provides overarching direction to the district's strategic planning. So since BQ's approval in November, our administration has been working closely with the policy committee. So I'd like to thank Ms. James and Ms. Drew and Mr. Rosenthal, who are the members on the policy committee. And we've been working on the rest of the BQ series to make sure that they are aligned and working cohesively as a group of policies. So policy BQA is the next policy in this series, and that outlines the community-based accountability, culture of truth-telling, and the influence that has on the district's strategic plan, which we as a district drive, and also the state-driven district improvement plan, which is required, as well as department plans. So after BQA, then there's BQAA, which articulates the role of program evaluation, which again helps inform the board to make those data-driven decision-making to support and align district goals and all the work behind that. Then we have policy BQAB, which talks about the role of research, again in providing critical information that can help guide the board and support administration when it comes to district planning and decision-making. And then lastly, there is policy BQB, and that articulates the campus improvement planning process and ensuring that all the campus improvement plans are aligned to the district's strategic plan. So in summary, the BQ policy series provides direction and alignment to the district's strategic planning process, again from the boardroom all the way to the classroom. So at this point, we'd like to turn it over to the board for any questions they may have around these policies. Thank you.
Mr. Rice.
I don't have a question, but I would like to make a few comments. And that is just a reminder to folks that might be at home watching this that we have two forms of policy. One is legal, and that gets updated every year by TASB, especially as the legislature, when they meet every 2 years and they formulate new laws and policies that we must subscribe to. TASB updates all of the legal policy that we have, and that's incorporated into our policy. But the local policy is peculiar to Fort Bend ISD. And when we have a new program, such as our campus-based accountability system, which is a brand new program, we have to create policy to support that. And we have a saying here, if it's not in policy, it doesn't exist. And as a board member myself, I have encountered certain things earlier on in my tenure as a board of some, I won't call it a tradition, but some things that the board had been doing in the past for which there was no policy to support it. And then as a board member, we had to take time to take up issues, various issues, and then make a decision, and then we had to change the policy. So I would just like to say that I myself do not like to write policy. However, I am well aware of the importance of having well-written, well-articulated policy, and I want to thank Mrs. James for her leadership in that area, Mr. Rosenthal and Ms. Drew for your work on this, and just to say thank you, because it's exacting, it's tedious, and it's time-consuming. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Rice, and thank you, Dr. Indelicato. Mrs. James, was there anything that you wanted to bring any attention to, or?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. There's just a couple of edits, really sort of they're not changing any of the concepts, but just a little bit of wording change, a couple of typos. I went over those this afternoon with staff, but I don't think that there's anything in particular that I would change. I do want to bring to your attention, though, one thing with regard to the program evaluation policy, which is BQAA, and that's a pretty, this is a new policy, and its parts have come from other policies. In talking to staff this afternoon, we were talking about the evaluations and the periodic program evaluations, and how do we figure out what those are. So I just want to ask a question, maybe if Mrs. Williams would come up to the microphone to give a little bit of an explanation about what's going on with that and what we can expect in the future.
Good evening. Thank you. So right now we're working on looking at program evaluation through 3 venues. First, Texas Education Code. So we're reviewing Texas Education Code to find the list of programs that are on an annual or every other year review cycle. Then within local policy, we've been scrubbing local policy to look for things where we say in policy that we'll do an annual review. One example is the recent wellness policy that you've looked at. It talks about an annual review. And then we're making a program inventory. And what will come out of that is a cycle of from launching a new program to when we might evaluate the effectiveness of that program and metrics that we would use along the way. So the way we see using this information is similar to what we did in the curriculum management plan. We would create a program improvement plan, and within that plan, one of the appendices would be a cycle over 5 years of what programs we would bring to you with an evaluation, including those that are required both by law and in our own policy.
Thank you. That's helpful. And would that maybe be an exhibit to this, or how do you see that how do you see that plan coming to us?
I believe it could be an exhibit to this so that you would have hands on that, or it could be part of the regulations, whichever way that we do that. I think I would defer to Anthony on how he would want to categorize that.
Okay, and we can sort of see how it turns out, I guess, as you get it all together.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Was there any other questions or comments?
Sorry, I'll say one other thing, because this is a thing we've talked about before, and it was part of the introduction. That is, Dr. Indelicato mentioned about the culture of truth-telling and how, Mr. Rice, the whole concept of the community-based accountability system is really predicated on a culture and an environment where we tell the truth, so that not only do we as a board hear the truth from administration, but administration hears the truth from the campuses and from the different departments. So that's in the philosophy of this, of these policies, but it's also going to be reiterated in evaluating the performance objectives and the signaling process. Because as that quarterly signaling happens, we've got to hear it right when it's happening, in order to help the campuses or help the departments to improve, to get them the resources they need, and so forth and so on. So that culture of truth-telling, we're going to try to get that incorporated in a sentence in here further down the policy.
Wonderful. Once again, I want to thank the policy committee on all their hard work. This is a lot of work, and it's a lot of hard work. So, and thanks, Dr. Indelicato, as well, and staff's work on this. Moving along to 5A2, review the proposed order of election to be conducted May 2nd, 2020. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, so I saw the early voting sites on there. The early voting sites and the election day sites are not always the exact same. Is there a reason we don't see both?
So I think the question is about whether the early voting sites, and this is in draft form. We went ahead and put it forward for the, sorry. The early voting sites you see are sites that have been used in the past, but the county hasn't yet confirmed the early voting sites. They're a bit behind schedule in with the primary season going on and gearing up for that. So those early voting sites are going to be used, but there could be more. There's always the possibility that the county will adjust. The most important thing that's not in there that will be in there is the hours in which those early voting sites will be open. So we had to get something, wanted to get something to you so you would see it in draft form.
So when will we see the final list, and when will we see the actual election day sites as well?
So the final list won't be provided until after the contract for joint election services is done. The county will try to get that to us at least 30, 45 days before the election. But again, because of the March primary this year, they're feeling, they basically asked for us to relax our expectations about when stuff is going to be delivered.
Mrs. Hellier?
Okay, so just to make sure I understood you correctly, who determines this list? Because I'm sitting here looking at this and I don't see the whole county represented in this early voting area.
So this would be the election you're calling for the trustees in May, and so it wouldn't be the entire county represented.
Well, excuse me, yes, the Fort Bend district.
Right, within the district, okay?
Yeah.
These are locations which have been used in the past and most likely will be used again. The county may add more, may subtract. They won't commit to a final list until closer to the election because they're still continuing to work out details with locations.
So we can't request certain areas?
Oh, we
Can
can.
request?
Oh, we've been in dialogue with the county. If there's a particular location that we would like to have added, they're very open to that.
Go ahead, Mrs. James.
So I was gonna say, just for clarification, so we're not really voting on this, we're just calling the election, and then later it'll come forward with a contract for services that will have the election sites listed.
That's correct.
All right, and if any of us happen to know of some places that need to be election sites, we might mention that to you because you're in negotiations with the county, is
Right.
that
That's
how
correct,
I understand
yes.
it?
And the county's very amenable to working with us to add sites, subtract sites, whatever.
Mr. Rosenthal, do you have a comment?
So just to clarify, we're not signing any contracts until there are final sites.
That is correct.
Great, thank you.
That is correct. Right. This is just the first preliminary procedural step, calling the election.
We're basically stating the date, and that's pretty much it, right? All right. Thank you. Moving along to 5A3, review a resolution to adopt the EVS 6020 voting system. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yeah, I actually read a little bit about this, and I would like to see if somebody could ask Mr. Oldham a question, because there was a concern that somebody had posted on there, I don't know whether it's true or not, but that it doesn't create a printable ticket of someone's voting response. It just stores it twice digitally, and so there was a concern about that, so.
So the county did do a presentation late December of the system, and that is not correct. One of the things that the county prides itself in the system is it does create that paper ballot. The one thing that's tricky in the past, when you've gone to vote and you hit that red button, cast my ballot, you were finished. In this system, you have to take your paper ballot and go put it in a box. And so if people take their paper ballot and walk out, they haven't yet voted. So there's a potential concern about that to make sure that voters understand the process. It's kind of a two-step process. But it's a system that I think it will require some education, but it will be a safer because it will have the ability to have that paper trail. But one thing I would note is that the county is willing to come out and do a demonstration for anybody who might be interested to see the system, to see how it works, because, you know, it is new, but, and I think it would be worth the time for anybody who is particularly a candidate who might want to be familiar with it to speak to voters.
Mr. Rice.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, Mr. Scarmato, but I think I heard you say when we go to vote, we're casting a digital ballot, but it prints out a paper ballot, and that we don't fill out the paper ballot. It prints it, but we must deposit that before we exit.
That's correct.
Wow.
When you go and register, when you show up to vote, you basically will get a blank piece of paper. And that blank piece of paper is inserted into the system. You do the voting, and then it gives it back to you. So it's recorded there electronically, but then it also, the paper ballot is to be deposited in the box. So that's the system.
Thank you.
Ms. Helliger.
That was like nails on a chalkboard for me. So quickly, what happens if a voter does not put the paper trail in the box, the receipt in the box? Is their vote invalid? I mean, does it have to, what's the word I'm looking for? Does it have to basically match the number of votes in the ballot? Number 633, reconcile, thank you. Number 633 has to match the 633 that's in the box. If the box doesn't have a 633 and I took it home accidentally, it's on my kitchen table, what happens?
So there is going to be a process in which daily, especially during early voting, that they do reconcile, and the numbers of persons who voted are to match the number in the box. Okay, what they will do about their emphasis at this point is focusing on ensuring that doesn't happen. Okay, that could. Now, I don't want to speculate about what it could happen because it depends on the situation, and I don't really know. That was not fully addressed in the presentation. But again, like I said, they did stress the importance of letting the electorate know that there is a new process and that everybody go in and understanding that there's a new process.
So to me, this is the first time, through this process that we're hearing about it. I don't know what the community knows. I know we already have challenges as it is when it comes to getting the populace out for a May election. So then my question is, are we saying that this resolution we have to vote on this resolution, correct? And what happens if we don't, they haven't given us enough information in order for us to approve this resolution? What do we do?
So I think if that's the board's census, that we would ask for the county to come make a presentation, show you the equipment, answer your questions so that you're comfortable before adopting this. Because the statute, because you are your own political subdivision, the statute requires you to adopt the system. Mm-hmm. So we have to have a joint election with the county, and the county has purchased this system based upon their review and their expertise. Experts they consulted with feel it's the best system. And so you have to come to that point of feeling comfortable with it and feeling as though it is with the county. And again, I think by just hearing the questions, we probably would be wise, I think, to schedule that for anybody who is concerned about what the process and system will look like, to be able to field those questions directly to the county.
So, one last question, Jason. Is this also going to be, are they already using this in like the primary election? Will they be using this in the primary election?
My understanding is it will be used in the primary election.
Okay,
right.
okay. Then people will have some exposure to it if it's used
before
in
the
primary.
trustee election, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Scarmato, could we see to it that we do have an opportunity for whatever trustees who would like to see how this works or ask any questions? Can we get that set up?
Sure. I think probably anyone who would like to maybe let Gary know, and then we'll coordinate it with the county.
Okay. Gary, can we send out an email to inquire about who may be interested? And then I would like to think that an election worker would be able to be at the door that would say, hey, where's your paper as you walk out, but we'll have to learn more about that.
That is exactly what I think they're intending, to add a poll worker at the door to make sure that everyone is told that before they leave.
Well, I'm glad we had the conversation. Hopefully we can get some more information and feel comfortable about that. So thank you, sir. Next, we're going to review the previous meeting minutes from December the 9th and December 16th, 2019. All right, we're good. Next, 5B1, review the 2021 district calendar and related staff development waivers. So, who worked on this? Ms. Martinez, you want to speak to this?
Good evening. Yes, sir. So strategic planning led the efforts for the district calendar this year, led by Dr. Alice Ledford. And with that, we had a period of time from October the 31st through November the 10th where we publicly posted the 2 calendar options and asked for feedback from the community. We received 5,578 responses, and the consensus around those responses led us to recommend to you all calendar option B. And the main difference between the two is the date of the holiday in October for students. The option B calendar has a fall holiday in October, on October the 30th, with the last day of school before the winter break being on Friday, December the 18th, and students returning on Wednesday, January the 6th. It's very similar to this year's calendar in the sense that we were able to provide a holiday, either a holiday or a professional development day within each month of the calendar to allow for those brain breaks and to allow for the ongoing professional development as well. If you have any questions, I'm here, and so is Dr. Ledford, to entertain those questions.
So just for those who do not know or who may be watching at home, as Mr. Rice may say, we go through the normal process of looking at what Katie's doing and all of our surrounding districts, Lamar. I mean, can you just speak to that briefly?
Yes, sir. We work with Region 4 and our surrounding districts because we want to make sure that we provide, for example, a spring break holiday that is consistent in our neighboring districts, and that also kind of keeps in mind our Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo event, as well as community colleges and universities in the area to the greatest extent possible. And we usually kind of lock arms with our surrounding districts to ensure that we're offering a calendar that is convenient for parents who may be co-parenting across districts or living in one and raising students in another. And so, yes, we do that. The work begins pretty much as soon as the board approves this calendar. The work will begin working on the coming year, the 21-22 calendar. We also have a member of the board. I'd like to thank Ms. Allison Drew for serving on the calendar committee. Each year we have a board member that serves in that capacity. And we also work with a team within the district to come up with some very viable options before we move forward and work with the calendar committee, which is comprised of staff. We had student input, parents, and community members as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and that is, I'm just going to reiterate what I heard you tell me. So we're closer to balancing the fall term and the spring term than we've been in the past. Was the fall term always the short one? Fall term always had the fewer days, which is one reason why years ago we took away the Fort Bend County Fair Day. Okay, and so now we're close 84 days in the fall, 91 days in the spring, so it's a 7-day gap.
Yes, sir, it's much closer.
Everybody wants a week off at Thanksgiving, and they want a week off at spring break, and now they're getting almost, they're getting 2 weeks and 2 days before they come back at the winter break. And we're starting school on August 12th.
That is
and
correct.
So I know that you and your committees are the ones who have done the homework on this and looked into it, and this falls within the instructional minutes. You've got 840 minutes for bad weather and so forth. My only comment is that it puts more pressure. I'm not saying we should change it, but it puts more pressure on Mr. Perez when he's trying to open a new school or do major renovation work in the summer. Because that's a pretty early start in August. So that's just something to be aware of, and we'll have to work around it. But I know you'll do your best. All right,
Sir,
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Ms. Hellier, do you have something to say? All right. Thank you very much for your work on that committee. Thank you, Mrs. Drew, as well. Thank you to staff. Appreciate that. Moving along to 5C, review contract for district-wide security guard services and related services. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, I see the chief here. So, Chief, my question is, I guess I assume that you guys did a lot of the tasks and whatnot that you guys are asking us to fund additional people for. So could you explain?
Well, that's part of it, yes, sir. So that's part of it. One of the things that we want to use the security guards, the security company for, at large sporting events, we have varsity football games, in the fall, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. We've always put one full-time police officer at each gate where people enter and pay. And we feel like we can use the security guard that's making about $18 an hour instead of somebody on overtime at $35 an hour to man those gates, and then we can better utilize our police officers inside the stadium. So that's one issue. The other thing is we've seen an increase from time to time in some threatening behavior and things like that are directed towards staff, and so we would like to put one of those uniforms over here at admin, one at the annex. Now that HR is housed at the annex. So those are a couple of examples where we think we could utilize those without having to utilize a full-time police officer and not have to ask for more bodies.
So will these folks be trained somewhat? I mean, probably not to the standards you guys are, or will they be?
Well, they're certified security guards. That's part of the contract, and we would have an option to hire either unarmed or armed, whether they use a car or not. We can specify what we want, and the company would give us what we ask for.
Okay. So, but are we going to, I don't know, do our own assessment to make sure these folks are qualified and well trained, or?
So we've gone through a process to review different companies. They've given us, I think we had, Brian, we had 11,
Yeah, I saw the list. There were plenty who responded to it. Yeah.
A bunch of companies that came in. We had 3 or 4 of them give us a presentation on site. So we asked all those questions. They're all state certified. They've all got their credentialing. Certainly, we're going to be in touch with them. They're going to have each one of the companies that we've asked for approval for. They guarantee that we'll have a supervisor from their company available to us 24/7, so that we can reach out to them with any concerns or issues that we have.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Chief, something that I'm really proud of in our district, and you do very well of, is our police officers they're an extension to us educating children. That's how I see it, anyhow. Will these guards have any interaction with their students, or is it just going to be adult issues, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're not planning on putting any security guards in a building in a school at this point. But I go back to when the incident at Santa Fe happened. We had some schools that needed some visibility right away, and we just didn't have the staff, and so we had to go out for a contract with a security guard company instantly, and it was very difficult to get a company that could provide what we wanted, and for the length of time that we wanted. So we felt it was in the best interest of the district to go ahead and get a plan in place, to get a contract in place, so that they know that we can call on them anytime and get bodies and personnel in place if something like that happens again.
Great. Thank you very much for the information. Appreciate it. Moving along to, let's see, 5C2. Review the use of 2007 bond funds for Quail Valley Middle School, egress mitigation, remediation, and construction. 5C3, we are going to pull from tonight's agenda and speak about that at a future time. So skipping on to 5C4, review a resolution to finance expenditures incurred during the 2007, 2014, and 2018 bond, as well as cost of the assessment of district facilities related design work, construction, acquisition, and equipment of school buildings. Mr. Rice.
Okay, Mr. Burdine, are you on page 56?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So my question, in reading through this, I understand that what you're recommending is that we authorize a resolution annually to allow for the use of general funds for design and construction, which we have to approve would be reimbursed at some future time, either by commercial paper or by the issuance of long-term debt. And the reason to do that is to defray the costs of the commercial paper or the long-term debt. And in the past, we've issued commercial paper in the amounts of $5 million, and now you're recommending $15 million. And so I think all of that is a sound financial recommendation. But my question is, will we at all times still maintain the 90-day operating fund balance?
Yes, sir, that is correct. So this would utilize cash balance that we have that is over and above that capacity.
Over and above the 90-day. Okay. Well, I think that we, and I want our friends at home to know that we got dinged on the this annual Texas Comptroller's report because we're saving you money. We got dinged because we have an intelligent and aggressive financial program that saves our taxpayers money, and unfortunately the state of Texas hasn't caught up to that yet. So we lead where others follow, apparently, and the state is following us. I want everybody to know that at home. We're saving you money, even though we got dinged by the Comptroller's office.
Yes. And I do want to point out, Mr. Rice, if you don't mind, and members of the board, we do have Mr. Jonathan Frells, who is a very active member of that team, who is here with us this evening, and he helps guide us through this process, as well as our financial advisor, to make sure that we do save taxpayers money, even though it doesn't necessarily align with how the state of Texas scores in the first rating.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for that, we'd have had a perfect A+ score. But I think we're doing a better job by saving taxpayers money and adopting an intelligent use. And Mr. Frells, we do thank you for your help, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Rice. Jim, you're starting to sound like Mattress Mac there. But no, once again, you guys are coming up with a creative way to save the taxpayers money. And, I mean, anytime we can save money, it's better for our students. So, thank you.
On behalf of the board, we appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
And your team, Mr. Frells. All right, moving along to 5C5, review a fixed rate order for new money and refunding bonds. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yeah, just again, I want to confirm that. So by doing this, we have the potential to save about $67 million in net present value. Correct?
That is correct.
Right. So once again,
Say that number again.
$67 million.
Thank you, sir.
And if I may, just to point out, both of these are a package. It's an either or perhaps both. What we're looking at is to maximize flexibility. Right now, the market conditions are at unprecedented lows, and we're hoping we'll benefit from that when we go out to market. If the market changes, however, we're being provided the flexibility to use the variable rate so that we would hopefully have savings either way.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rice.
Mr. Gwynn, I believe you're making a presentation to the Fort Bend Chamber on understanding school finance. And if you probably planned on mentioning this in the presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to review a variable rate bond order for refunding commercial paper. We already there. 5C7, review conversion of the Fort Bend ISD variable rate unlimited tax refunding bonds. Mr. Rice.
So this is for variable rate, and the first one was for a fixed rate, or the one
That's
before
right.
this was fixed rate. This is variable rate.
This is for a specific series that we have that has to be, it's the 2017 C bonds, and at this point, the initial rate period will expire on August 1st. So we'll either need to go out and convert to a new term or fix it out. And again, using those prior two items that we're asking for board consideration on, we would either go out with a fixed rate or perhaps redo it through a variable rate, depending on what market conditions are. But this one is specific to that particular series.
I'm trying to remember what the threshold, the percentage of variable rate was. Most of our debt is long-term.
Correct.
But there's a certain threshold that we're not supposed to exceed. I think it's 20%. Is that right?
It's 25%, correct?
20,
We're at
25.
25%, and based on our current rating, our fixed rate debt is at about 82.4%, and variable rate at 17.6%, so we're well within
Well
that
within.
threshold.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving along to 5C8A, review purchase of district fleet vehicles for facilities department. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir. Could somebody give us some examples of, I'm just thinking why we need all these vehicles for all these positions that we approved. I'd just like to see an example of what they're being used for.
Yes, sir. So, excuse me. Now my voice. I'm losing it here, but so the board approved with the last budget for us to go to fund some additional staff. And what we didn't bring at that time was vehicles for the staff to be able to get around. So this is literally white vehicles, for them to be able to get to the different parts of the district.
So what types of positions are these again?
These are, we approved HVAC positions, we approved plumbing positions. It was just our normal maintenance positions.
Okay, and we don't have any extra vehicles that they can use at this point?
We do not, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir. 5C8B, review the purchase of data center co-location services. C8C, review the purchase of data center firewalls, subscriptions, and related services. 5C8D, review the purchase of elevator service, maintenance, repairs, and related items. Moving along to 5C9A, review construction services agreement with Atlas Universal Incorporated for roofing replacements at multiple campuses in the West Zone. All right. Next, go ahead, Mrs. James, I'm sorry, go for it.
That's all right. I just had a question on this. I was a little bit confused on the numbers here. So, we're approving a contract amount of $20 million. Is that what we're approving?
That is correct.
And then are we also approving the overall project budget for the $25 million? Or we already approved that?
That was already approved.
Okay. And so, the narrative in here talks about when we originally approved the budget, we were now not needing to do the roof at Garcia Middle School because that roof was done recently.
That is correct. It was done in 2014. And, as we were putting together, $1 billion bond, that was overlooked, and so we put money in there for that roof replacement. But as we went out to go ahead and verify scope, we realized it had already been replaced. So the money is still within that 25 million, but the scope is not considered.
Okay, so this isn't, I guess what I'm getting at is, in the project budget, how much is contingency and design fees and all things like that? So if I subtract out the Garcia Middle School project for the 3.2 million or whatever it was, is that gonna be the total, roughly the project budget, what you're expecting to spend, or is there a different number in there?
The overall budget is the 25 million. As part of the fact that we did not have to go ahead and replace a roof, in every project, as we bid a project out, we put in alternates, because we're, depending on the market, we're wanting to see where is this gonna come in. So what this has allowed us to do is to go ahead and bring in the different alternates that we're showing, do that additional scope of work, and still be well within the 25 million.
Okay, I got it. So you're adding in these 5, 7, 10, 11, 13, that alternate list
Correct.
to include those instead of the other project that we don't need to do anymore.
Correct. And we will utilize, some of the construction contingency and some of the project contingency, but it's still 20 million out of the 25 million overall budget.
Right, because the 25 million, sorry, just to clarify, so the 25 million is the overall budget, which includes the contingency, it includes some design fees, I imagine, it includes
Yes, ma'am.
other testing and whatever all you have to do, right?
Correct.
So that's the overarching, so this is just the contract for the actual construction.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mr. Perez, after looking at this item, for example, Sugar Mill Elementary School, your team has labeled specific areas of the roof to be replaced versus a whole full system, I guess based on need. Is that what I'm seeing from that?
Yes, sir. Well, actually, if you'll look at this, we're doing a full system replacement, but part of it is a PVC, and then the other is a metal roof.
Okay.
And that's why it's broken out, because certain sections are metal, certain sections are a PVC roof.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Rosenthal.
So this is what we you remember, Grail, you were there too. So we kind of had similar discussion a few months ago with you and Charles and Carolina, and so it's basically the same thing where I don't want to get too much into it, but you got a bid and then you wanted to add on, do some extra things.
Correct. If we receive a favorable bid such as this,
Right.
excuse me, we're able to bring in this additional scope.
Right. Got it.
Thank you, sir. We do not, next on our agenda are audience items, our audience response to agenda items. We do not have any speakers this evening. So our one and only action item, which is 5C7A1, consider approval of innovative courses.
Mr. Burdine, I move that we approve the innovative courses as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenthal.
On the piano technician, I know there's been some discussion with Marshall, and so this is something that they were very interested in, correct?
Yes, sir. We've had multiple conversations with the committee, and they have high interest in having this program there at Marshall.
Good. And can you explain just a little bit more about the hearing loss program?
So the hearing loss program is not currently offered, and this would be an opportunity for students who are hearing impaired to have the necessary information and resources that will empower them to effectively apply information and skills that are learned within the school setting, in the community, and at home, and allow course credit for that learning and for those opportunities. They would be addressing in this class audiology, hearing health, assistive technology, available support and accommodations, and integration into the deaf culture while earning credit for the course.
And where would those be housed? Would it be all throughout the district or just certain areas?
Those courses would be held at areas where there are students in need of the course. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go for it.
I was just going to say, with the approval of these proposed courses, it really gives us the opportunity to submit those to the Texas Education Agency for their approval. And then once we get approval from TEA, we can work out the level of specificity in terms of where the specific offerings will take place. But the action for the board is really so that we can submit to TEA and they can approve the innovative courses that will allow us to offer these expanded program opportunities and course opportunities.
So, in essence, we're providing more programs of choice.
Correct.
Well, course options, yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. James?
And would these courses be offered in the upcoming school year, or would it take a period of time for them to be approved by the TEA?
We should receive approval from the TEA before the end of this school year so that we could offer in 2021.
So they'll be, will they be on the course selection choices that are coming up? Because I think the students are going to start doing their course selection soon.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Well, one or a couple more questions is, how easy do you think it's going to be to find teachers for these courses? And I had another one, now I forgot, but that was the main thing.
I think Mr. Rodriguez can talk, or Dr. Rodriguez can talk about the piano tech and what our plan is in terms of staffing that position.
Yes, so we do have a plan. We're going to go ahead and have an FTE that's going to be able to assist with teaching the course, but also perform some other duties and responsibilities when it comes to assisting with actual repair and the work that needs to be done with some of our pianos.
So would they be doing some of that repair maybe district-wide and teaching it at Marshall?
Yes, and that is the plan. And I know Mr. Drew is here, so please correct me if I'm wrong with anything. But that is the current plan that we have. And as soon as they're being phased in for the next, we'll say for the next 4 years, the plan is to have those students also assist this individual with also providing some of the repair and the support that we need with our own instruments.
Okay. Yeah, as long as we have, you know, because I mean, if the teacher's only teaching one class a day or something like that, and sitting around for 6 hours, then you know, do we really need a full-time equivalent? But as long as you know this person's going to be actually working and doing other things, then that sounds good.
Yeah. Mr. Drew, is there anything else you want to add?
So right now the plan is to hire a master piano technician that would come in, and initially the first year of the program they would be teaching 1 period a day and have one period of prep, and then spend the rest of the day working on our district pianos, because we have over 300 district pianos. And then as the program grows and we add courses, then the piano technician will do less work, and the students will actually, some of the juniors and seniors will take over some of those tuning and repair responsibilities.
Is there? Do you think there might be a chance for this person to teach at one of the other schools as well? I'm just trying to think. The first year's got one class, one planning period, he, she, whatever, and then the second year there, you know, be level 1, level 2 planning periods. I'm just trying to think as if there's enough time to be spread out maybe over 2 schools.
We actually have enough work for a full-time piano technician to tune all of our district pianos. I mean, that's a full-time job in and of itself. So I think they'll be busy.
So I assume we're hiring people on the outside to do our tuning work, right?
Right now we are, yes, we're hiring, we spend about $20,000 a year on piano tuners. And that's only tuning the piano once a year. Ideally, the piano should be tuned twice a year, and then repair work on top of that.
Okay.
So
I'm just making sure we're making a good economic decision as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Please vote by show of hand. Motion passes. We will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subject matters required by law. We are now convened in closed session.